Hey, this is Don from Padlock Technologies again, back with another video. When you see the black go on, you know what we're going to do. We're going to do a theory video. What we're going to do, you probably saw a couple of my posts probably a couple of days ago. We're going to talk about active multi-context mode on an ASA. Now, I'm going to discuss what multi-context mode is, and then I'm going to tell you what multi-context mode is in the realm of active high availability, or HA. Now, I'm gonna tell you flat out, you're probably not going to see this out in the wild a lot. But if you're taking your CCI security, there's a good chance you might see this on the lab. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't exist in the real world, but 9 times out of 10, you're not going to see this, right? So that 1% time, at one time, you may see it. So it's good to learn the theory first. And then after we get this theory video out the way, I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like in a lab, very basic lab, but I'm going to explain the technique, and then you'll have another tool in your toolbox per se, if you ever wanted to do this in the wild. Now, the reason why I say you don't see this a lot now is because of the secure firewall platform, the FTD, as some of you may know, and multi-context mode doesn't exist there. There's multi-instant mode. So you're not going to see this unless you're running a secure firewall box from a hardware perspective with ASA code and security licenses to do this. So with that being said, let's get to the whiteboard or blackboard. I'll explain the theory, and then after that, I will do another video on the actual lab showing you what it looks like. Before we get into the whiteboard, I'm going to ask you for that favor. If you like stuff like this, you get some value from this video, please don't forget to share, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm building my channel. I appreciate all the subscribers and all the attention I'm getting, and I like to build the channel and make it even bigger than what it is now. So I appreciate everything from you guys. Any type of favor that you do for me, like and subscribing, I really appreciate it. With that being said, let's get into the whiteboard. All right, so we haven't done a theory video in a while, so we're going to actually talk about, this is multi-context mode, if I can spell. So that's multi-context mode. Use the handwriting here. So what multi-context mode and multi-instant mode is, it allows you to take a ASA, say this is the ASA, and chop it up into virtual ASAs on the same physical hardware. And they're going to save the stars. They're going to have the same physical hardware, but they're going to chop it up into virtual firewalls. So if you're on Fortinet, this is a VDOM, virtual domain. If you're on, I did a video on the FMC, you can do domains on the FMC. If you are on a Palo Alto, these are your virtual systems, stuff like that. Now, you do need a certain license to do this, but you can do it on the ASA. On an FTD, it would be multi-instant mode. This is like your 4200 series, your 6100 series. Now, I was going to say 9300 series, but there is a 6100 series that's coming out, which is supposed to be better than the 9300 series. So we're going to scratch the 9300 series for now, and I'm going to say the 4200 series and the 6100 series. So let's do that. Now, each one of these firewalls, virtual firewalls, you can assign separate interfaces to them. You use different colors. And they are exclusive to each firewall. That means any kind of, firewall rules, and we're just going to do the ASA, so we're not going to talk about the source fire module or anything like that. Any type of NAT rules, any kind of configuration, network objects, stuff like that, that is going to be separate amongst the virtual firewalls. And what you can do, you're probably going to see this mainly at like the service provider kind of instance, or if you just have a big network and you want to segment what traffic goes out of what firewall, then you can have, instead of buying 3 individual firewalls, you just buy one big one and then virtual them out. Now, from a networking perspective, you can assign each interface, so you can find the IP here, you can find the IP here, IP here, etc. Right? Now, obviously, they can't be the same IP address amongst all the virtual firewalls. If you wanted to do something like that, this is where clustering would come into play. And you'd have, at least on the ASA platform, it used to be up to, depending on, it used to be, I think, 8 when it originally came out, but now you can do like 16 in a cluster. So you can have 16 firewalls. Physical firewalls look like one big firewall. But this has nothing to do with multi-context. Now, each one of these virtual firewalls is a context. So you have context A, context B, context C. Now you can call these contexts whatever you want. In the lab that I'm going to show you, I'm going to have 2, and then you're going to have I'm going to have a sales context and a finance context. Now there are some other contexts in here that they don't tell you about. These are the user contexts, but you do have. I'll have it off to the side. You have an admin context, and then put one up here, system context. All right. Now the admin context is what you're going to use to create these user contexts. Okay. And then you can create multiple contexts through the admin context. You can allocate interfaces to these sub contexts through the admin context. And then you can change to different contexts from the admin context. But what you cannot do is go from context A directly into context B. You have to go to admin context and then back into context B. So there's no, hey, I'm just going to jump from one to one. Can't really do that, right? Now, the admin context, obviously, you usually will see the management interface in the admin context because you don't really need to do anything in the admin context other than manage the subcontext and then, create new ones, stuff like that. So you'll have an interface here, then you have a user down here, like an admin, put a handwriting again, and then you just log into that, manage your context from there. So that is a single firewall multi-context mode. So what does multi-context mode with active-active HA looks like? So when you add I'm just going to call it MC with AAHA. So this is multi-context with active-active HA. Basically, what you're going to have is the same concept that you just saw in a single context, but you're going to have 2 firewalls here. And we run an HA. I'll say failover, stateful link. Now you could have it in one link, but I like to do a separate heartbeat or a failover versus a stateful link. Now you're going to have, like I said before, your context is in here. You know what? I'm going to do 2 just so it kind of correlates with the lab here, so it doesn't look a little different. So you can have 2 contexts in each, obviously user context, and then I'll just put my admin context off to the side, right? So we're going to say A for admin. We'll include the system the system context in there as well, and then you'll have A, B, A, B. Now, what happens from an HA standpoint is you're going to have a primary for the admin context and a secondary for the admin context, right? Then you're going to have a primary, say prime, for the context A, and we'll use blue. Secondary for context A. Now here's where the HA standpoint. Now in this design right now, if we just leave it the way it is, that means firewall 1. And let me put ASA 1 up here. ASA 1, ASA 2. So if we just have it like this, ASA1 would be primary for the admin context and context B. Now here's where the active-active come through. So all traffic will be going to ASA1 if you weren't using active-active. Where active-active comes through, and this is where the key comes in, primary, the B context, the quote-unquote primary, is the secondary for that specific user context. And then the secondary is the primary. All right. So we have our interfaces, individual interfaces. From a user standpoint, let's say the user is going to see two big switches in this, right? And this is what you're going to see in my design as well. So you'll see a switch up here, probably switch, switch. These links here that are going into each switch are going to be trunks. I'm just going to use T for right now. So trunks. All right. You're going to have separate VLANs to do this, all that good stuff. From a user perspective, let's say downstream, this is on VLAN 10, this is on VLAN 11, VLAN 10, VLAN 11. And this is what I actually did in the lab. So from a user perspective, we say we got the users down here. Users down here, right? This is a user in VLAN 10. This is a user in VLAN 11. When they forward their traffic to the firewall, and I'm in my example, in my lab example, the firewall is going to be a DHCP server, and it's going to be the gateway. When traffic for 10 wants to go to the internet, it will go into the switch, and then I probably should use yellow for this. It will go to firewall 1. Now, when we want to go on for user 11, I'll just reverse it. Sorry, use green. Instead of going to the primary, it will go to the switch. Then it would actually go to the quote unquote secondary for the admin and system context is the primary for the user context, the secondary user context from a, point of view standpoint. Let's say the secondary is the, context B for this one. Now, if you're looking at this, like I said, context A, the primary is ASA1, context B, the primary is context, or the primary is for context B is ASA2. So this is where the active-active comes into play, because in your normal active standby failover, you have everything going over the primary firewall, and then in an event, failover event, everything goes over to the secondary. Why would somebody do this? Well, they're trying to utilize both boxes, because this is where the money aspect comes in. From a budgetary standpoint, some people say to themselves, well, we have a box in standby mode and we're not really utilizing it unless it's a failover event, so we're not really getting our money for that, that firewall. In this situation, you are utilizing both. So you're not technically doing clustering, because that's a different technique, but you're still doing active-active. Now, what happens in a failover event? So in a failover event, if context A, for some odd reason, let's say a link goes down or something, depending on your policy, your failover interface policy, if that link disappears, well, now you have a failover event for the user context of context A, and now the secondary firewall now becomes the primary for context A. Same thing on the other side, right? So if context B goes down, well, then ASA1 becomes the primary for context B, right? So that's where your failover event actually comes from, right? Same box, as long as the box don't disappear, then you're fine there. But let's say just a link went down, or something from a VLAN perspective got messed up. You know what it is? You did the VLAN trunk allow command and didn't put the add on there, and you just erased VLANs. I've seen that plenty of times. And now a failover event happens. It will go over to that context. And that's typically what you would see from an active-active HA design. A lot of people get this confused because they think active-active means both firewalls are acting as the default gateway at the same time. No, not in this situation. In order for you to do that and have one IP across multiple firewalls, you have to use clustering. In this situation, you are just active-active you're using active-active for different VLANs. So you could technically have like VLAN 10, 11, 12 on one context, VLAN 13, 14, 15 on another context, VLAN 16, 17, 18 on a third context, and you would just load balance them between the two. So that's really what multi-context mode with active-active HA technically is. Hope you got the theory here. If not, watch this video again. Let's get out of this whiteboard and just review what I just talked about. So that was multi-context mode with active-active and HA, right? Or active-active HA. We went over what single firewall with multi-context is, which is basically one firewall with multiple contexts in between it. But from a single point of failure standpoint, you're probably not going to see this on one firewall. So what you're going to introduce is either active standby or active-active. What I did in this whiteboard was active-active. Now you can still technically do active standby, and it's just the same as a regular active standby HA setup. The only difference is you don't have one context or one admin context, you have multiple contexts. So in an active standby situation, firewall 1 would be the primary for every last one of your contexts, no matter how many contexts you have, and then firewall B would be standby. But if you want to load balance it and get some more bang for your buck, you're going to do the active-active setup, and then you're going to have to, detail the VLANs and stuff like that if you don't have enough interfaces on that firewall. So that's active-active multi-context HA in a nutshell. If you haven't subscribed already, do it. Share, comment, like, and subscribe. Tell a friend and tell a friend, because when I show you this in the lab, a lot of people, this should clear up this video. The lab video is going to definitely clear up the theory video, but you need a theory video to understand what I'm doing in the lab. This is Don from Parallel Technologies. Again, thank you and have a nice day.